Greetings all, Ferrariman601 here. VRC have released their largest and most ambitious project to date, Formula North America. This mod, which VRC have chosen to release in at least 2 installments up to this point, is dedicated to the recreation of American open-wheel racing. Now, the United States is not particularly well known for driving open-wheeled cars, and they're particularly not well known for driving open-wheeled cars on road courses. However, through the years of automotive history, the United States has been out to play in the realm of open-wheel racing, and American open-wheel racing, particularly in the past, has been the storyline for some tremendous moments in motorsport history. And even though the European side of open-wheel racing does steal all the headlines, Formula 1, Formula 2, of course, some very big names in Formula 1 in rather recent memory, I'm talking about drivers like Jacques Villeneuve and Juan Pablo Montoya, guess where they got their start? They got their starts here in the United States in the American flavor of open-wheel racing, particularly in cars such as the one that we see before us. In this absolutely biblical trifecta that VRC have given us, we have 3 cars making up the Formula North America pack. We have this one, which is Formula NA 1999. We have another one, which is Formula NA 2012, and there is still one more to come, which I can only assume VRC are going to be calling Formula NA 2018. The car that we see before us here, this is Formula NA, Formula North America 1999. This car is very heavily based on the 1999 Reynard 99i chassis, which raced in the kart championship, as it was known back then. Kart Champ Car. Unfortunately, that series went completely defunct in 2007. However, through the 80s and 90s, kart was really where it was at in terms of open-wheel racing in the United States. To this day, these cars are still the fastest race cars that we have ever seen in terms of straight line speed, as well as in terms of cornering speed when we talk about when these cars raced on ovals. Absolutely huge levels of performance in those kart cars, and VRC, in their recreation of what is effectively the 99 Reynard, as we have said, they truly have brought that performance to all of us here in Assetto Corsa. This mod is coming in at least 2 different installments. The first of which, this is currently version 1.1, the first of which includes 2 cars, this one, Formula NA 1999, as well as the 2012 car, Formula NA 2012. That car is a recreation of the Dallara DW12, which raced in the IndyCar Championship from 2012 through 2017. And the car to come, Formula NA 2018, is the Dallara IR18, which we are due to receive sometime soon. No ETA yet from VRC, but I do know that they are all very hard at work at it. Before we get into the technical specs on this car, just one thing that I do want to mention on request from VRC. As VRC have matured in their Assetto Corsa modding, and these guys have done absolutely incredible work for a number of years now for all of us in Assetto Corsa, they are starting to partner up with some real-world financial partners, and VRC's sponsor for this project, and perhaps for some other projects as well, is Fast Track Sims. Fast Track Sims, they are a company based out of Georgia here in the United States, and they are a provider and manufacturer of all things sim racing. They will produce sim cockpits, monitor mounts, keyboard mounts, wheel mounts. They're even making some actual driving hardware of themselves in terms of steering wheels. Also, they've got an apparel shop. You could get driving gloves, sweatshirts, things like that. So Fast Track Sims, they are making a name for themselves in the real-world sim racing market, just as VRC continue to make a name for themselves in the Assetto Corsa world. So link to Fast Track Sims in the description. Do check them out. They have some very cool stuff on their website. Anyway, back to what we're talking about here. Some logistics that I want to cover. Because this pack is so big, and because it's still not finished yet, what I want to do with this video is not cover the entire Formula NA pack in a single video, because it would be too long and it would be too unwieldy, especially considering that all of these cars, 3 of them as we're going to have eventually, each of those cars have 2 variants, a road course variant and an oval variant. And depending on the trim level that you've got the car in, it's a completely different driving experience. So in order to devote the sufficient time that I need to devote to each car, to explain it thoroughly, and to show you how it drives in a representative manner, I'm going to be breaking this video up into at least 3 constituent parts. So this one here is only going to be covering the 1999 car. We're going to talk about it in the road course as well as in the oval spec, but we're not going to talk about the 2012 car yet. And that, of course, as of this recording, is the only other car that we have available in the current release of the Formula NA pack. Once we get the 2018 car, of course, we're going to be doing the same thing with that car as well. But for this preliminary first video, we're only talking about this one, the 1999 car. So please do bear with me. And of course, stay tuned because that's going to be some content headed your way in the coming weeks. Finally, let's get on to talking about why this car is so cool and why it's already been featured in a number of videos on my channel. Well, first of all, a little bit of background on the time and place that this car comes from in its real-world Reynard 99i guise. The 1999 kart season, it was an absolute epic. We have all sorts of drama. We have all sorts of intrigue. We have just as much in terms of interesting storylines from the 1999 kart season as we do from any Formula One championship. The 99 season, it started on the 21st of March and it ended on the 31st of October. Unfortunately, throughout the course of the year, we did see 2 fatalities. Driver Gonzalo Rodriguez, he was killed at Laguna Seca when his throttle became stuck open, and Greg Moore, he was killed at Fontana, California Motor Speedway. I believe it's called Auto Club Speedway nowadays. He had a massive accident, crashed into the inside barriers there, running across the grass there, getting airborne, flipping over. So we had 2 fatalities in that 1999 season, a number of big accidents as well that did injure drivers and take them out of contention for the rest of the season there. Very much a difficult year for racing in general. However, we did have a very big bright spark in the form of the Drivers' Champion and Rookie of the Year from 1999, Juan Pablo Montoya. Remember him? It was his first season in kart after he had done 2 very successful years in Formula 3000. He won the Drivers' Championship in 1999. He also won Rookie of the Year, believe it or not. So 2 for 1 in one season in Juan Pablo Montoya. Brilliant talent. Of course, he would go off to Formula One for the 2001 season with Williams. The Constructors' Cup, as it was then known, we'll get into the difference between a Constructors' Cup and a Manufacturers' Cup, was won by Reynard. So basically the car you see here, it was the best chassis in the field. The Manufacturers' Cup, as we mentioned, was won by Honda. The Nations' Cup, Brazil took that title, and we already mentioned Rookie of the Year, Juan Pablo Montoya. Now, this car won the Constructors' Cup. It's similar in its idea to the Constructors' Championship in Formula One. However, the Manufacturers' Cup, what's all that about? Well, the Manufacturers' Cup was for engine suppliers. Honda won the Manufacturers' Cup. The Constructors' Cup, of course, won by Reynard with the car that basically we see before us. In terms of chassis manufacturers that were competing in 1999, it's actually a pretty varied and diverse field. Taking the start for any number of races in 1999, we had cars built by Penske, Lola, Reynard, Swift. Yeah, lots of different manufacturers. We had Eagles, the AAR car there. Eagle built a chassis for kart in 1999 as well. So we had multiple constructors. This was not a spec formula back in that day. And in terms of engine suppliers, we had Mercedes, Honda, Ford, and Toyota. So we had multiple engine suppliers, multiple chassis constructors. This was basically the closest the United States ever got to Formula One in terms of having a constructors championship and a drivers championship with different engine suppliers. Really, really amazing stuff. And again, it happened back in 1999. What have VRC, however, given us with their interpretation of what kart was like in 1999? Well, let's talk about some specs here. This, of course, is Formula NA, Formula North America 1999. So This is one of eventually the 3 cars that we'll get in this pack. It weighs 705 kilograms. A Formula One car of this era, 1998, 1999, 2000, they weighed 600 kilograms. So we're about 105 kilograms heavier than a Formula One car of the period. However, the horsepower that this thing is putting out very much eclipses what Formula One was doing in that time. 960 horsepower out of this single turbo V8 engine. 960 horsepower at 14,800 RPM. So some absolutely stratospheric revs coming from that engine. Maximum torque, 483 Newton meters at 12,000 RPM. So essentially what we've got here is a car that's quite a bit heavier than a Formula One car of the era. Remember, 1999, Formula One was about 600 kilograms. This is 705. However, we have roughly 200 more horsepower than a Formula One car of the era. This means that this car has some absolutely crazy acceleration. 0 to 60 miles an hour comes and goes in about 2.4 seconds there or thereabout. So we have got ourselves some pretty significant performance figures. Max speed, that's going to vary depending on how you have this thing trimmed out. This car comes in 2 basic trim levels, a road course trim with bigger wings and an oval trim with much smaller wings. So depending on how you've got the downforce set up, just like on a Formula One car, your straight line speed is going to be impacted quite significantly. When you really trim this thing out in oval spec, and remember, you've got 960 horsepower at full boost with the turbocharger cranked up, this thing will exceed 400 kilometers per hour. So in other words, this will hit 250 miles per hour if you've got a road long enough. Yeah, this is pretty significant performance. That's straight line speed that Formula One has never seen, and I dare say will never see. So we're talking very close to 20 years ago now. 250 miles an hour was your performance potential. That is fairly amazing stuff, if I must say. In terms of the brakes on these things, we've got steel brakes on this car, at very least in the oval spec. I'm not entirely sure if they had carbon brakes on the road course spec. Obviously, when we drive the car in its different configurations, we'll talk about the braking performance and how widely it varies. But definitely, in terms of most of the running gear, this car, remember, we're judging it from 1999. This car was about 10 years behind Formula One in terms of its overall technology. However, the performance, more comparable than you might expect. Looking at what VRC have done with the modeling on this car, well, as you can see, VRC, they are one of the best names in Assetto Corsa modding today, and they have not disappointed us yet again. They've done so many cars up to this point, and every single one that they do, even in its first ever releases, it looks absolutely fantastic. And this one, of course, is no exception, and the DW12, when we do take a look at that car, it looks just as good. You can see here, we can get in very close to all of those details here in the bodywork. You can see everything in terms of the body lines. It looks crisp and clean and smooth. There really isn't much pixelation, even on some of these really strangely shaped edges, particularly on the front wing flaps there. Everything looks very clean and very nicely proportioned, very highly polished, as VRC can only do. Looking across the front end of the car here, you can see that there is some familiarity in this region. Have a look at this suspension layout. Look familiar? Looks like a double wishbone push rod, does it not? Well, that's because it is. Formula One of the era also using double wishbone push rod suspension. Little bit of technology sharing. However, as we move further down on the car, further rears, you can see some of those similarities are ending. What do you not see here, just the rears of those suspension pickup points? You don't see barge boards. Well, no barge boards on these cars. However, what we do have on this car, you can see just below the radiator inlet there on the side pod, you can see those 2 strakes moving rears. That's going to tip you off to how this car generates its performance. This is a ground effect car in every sense of the word. You notice as you look across the top side of the bodywork, there's really not all that much going on. On a Formula One car of this era, you would see big turning vanes. You would see flick-ups in front of the rear wheels, and you can kind of see that here, these little winglets there. However, you don't really see too much activity topside. That's because most of this car's downforce, whether it's in road course spec or in oval spec, most of the car's downforce is being generated by the under tray via big Venturi tunnels in the underside of the car. 2 tunnels underneath the car, one underneath each side pod for the most part, and that is what's generating all the downforce. This is a flat bottom car, so there is no reference plane and no step plane like you would get in a Formula 1 car of the era. However, as we take a look at the rear end, you can see that there are 2 tunnels cut into the under tray there. So that is where this car is generating the majority of its downforce. This is a ground effect car. You'll notice we'll come across the side of the car. There are no skirts, as it were. It's not like Formula 1 was doing in the 80s, where they had sliding skirts that would physically scrape across the track surface to seal the under tray and seal those tunnels up. Kart wasn't quite that aggressive with it, but you can see as we move rears once again, taking a look at the exit of the diffuser, you can see that those 2 tunnels, definitely very aggressive. Lots of air being scooped up by the front end of the car and then conditioned by these strakes here underneath that radiator inlet in the side pod. Very conventional relative to Formula 1 terms. And then the air is exhausted out the back via the diffuser, generating a lot of downforce. Of course, all of that's still working in conjunction with the front and rear wings. And this car, right now, it's in road course spec, so you can see the front and rear wings rather sizable, very substantial. And of course, they are generating a lot of downforce. They do look somewhat rudimentary by modern standards, particularly when you look at modern Formula 1 wings. However, in 1999, remember what Formula 1 teams were doing. The front wings in particular, they were basically single element wings. They had flat cross sections on their leading edges, and then they were mounted to the nose via pylons. Look at the wing solution on this car. We don't have any pylons at all connecting this wing to the nose. We just have 2 main planes stuck onto either side of the nose. This is very reminiscent of Formula 1 wing design through the mid to late 80s, and depending on which teams you're looking at, even through the mid 90s. I'm thinking about teams like Ferrari, for example, believe it or not. Look at the 94 and 95 Ferraris. The wings are mounted directly to the nose, and the nose is very low. That's the same thing you see on this car. Now, Formula 1 designers, they don't want that nose to be that low, and of course in 2017 and 2018 still we see low noses. That's because of regulations, but the reason Formula 1 went to the high nose design was because they were trying to feed the under tray that way. They're trying to feed the front end of the car because they've got barge boards up front there, and they're trying to get those barge boards working well. If you have a low and wide nose, you're starving the under tray. With these cars, the idea was fundamentally different. Now, of course, this is in road course spec, and in the oval spec you would see that the front wing is much smaller. However, the idea is to feed these side tunnels here, and the front wing is not going to interfere as much as you might think with that flow, because you can see the wing is still largely off the ground. So those tunnels there coming in from roughly where the radiator inlets are, just below them, they are generating the majority of your downforce, particularly with that ground effect solution. So that's why we've got that wing mounted where it is and the nose as wide and as low as it is. Also, this nose has to be a very substantial crash structure, as you might imagine, given the speeds these cars are running at. Having a look at the cockpit area, and you can also see the roll hoop structure, just like you see on a modern Indy car, modern Formula 1 car, you've got that roll hoop mounted up top there. This one, though, is not an air snorkel, it's just an open roll bar. That's because the engine intakes are basically right where the radiator inlets are. Turbocharged engine, single turbo, they wanted to feed it off the side. That's what they did. They did not put a snorkel on this car. Also, some other interesting things that you'll see that you don't find on Formula 1 cars. You see up top here, that center stack coming through the engine cover, that's your turbocharger wastegate, believe it or not. And then just above that, you can see a valve. That is actually for the air jacks on this car. Formula 1 cars don't have air jacks. However, this car had air jacks, and the current Indy cars also do, as did the DW12. Car made a pit stop. Airline goes in the top there. These 4 little pedestals shoot out from the bottom of the car. Car pops up off the ground. 4 tires off, 4 tires on. Fuel in, going through courtesy of this big filler nozzle there. And then, yep, send the car back out on its way. Very, very nice, elegant solution. Something I wish we could see in Formula 1. Anyway, Taking a look at the cockpit, you can see VRC have spared no detail. You can also see in there we have a gear stick. Here is a point of contention already that has come up with this mod. These cars had sequential gearboxes in the real world. They obviously were stick shift, technically speaking, but the way a sequential box is operated in most cases, it's just a stick that goes forward and back. You can only engage gears up and down sequentially, basically the same theory as a paddle shift, but sequential gearboxes still in most cases require that you lift at very least, if not engage the clutch on the upshifts, and they also require that you rev match and sometimes dip the clutch on downshifts. Again, it depends on precisely which gearbox you have and how your car is set up. But that was the idea in these cars, a sequential stick shift gearbox. This mod comes with two sets of physics for this car. One, you have a sequential box like I just described. Two, you have an H-pattern manual box. Now, I am not that well read on my kart history. I've been trying to scour the internet on specifics in terms of which cars had which gearboxes, so I don't know if in 1999 any of those cars were running traditional H-pattern manual boxes. However, I have chosen to install the H-pattern physics for this mod, so we'll be driving this car with a stick and clutch, just like you would a manual road car. It's a point of contention already in some of the comments in my videos, people asking why did VRC do that? Why didn't they just give it the sequential box and we'd all just deal with it? I'm guessing they were trying to be cognizant that not everybody has the same types of equipment. I know that it's much easier for me to run an H pattern than it is for me to run the sequential. It's just how I like to set up my gear, but they've given us that option. I like the H pattern. You may like the sequential. We can hash it out in the comments. Anyway, to the cockpit. We've been talking about it enough. Flying in here over the cockpit surround, and you can see very nicely done by VRC. Lots of detail. You can see it's actually rather sparse, rather utilitarian, and you can see that there are a whole bunch of open sections in here, things that you don't normally see in Formula 1. There are also some other controls that you don't see in Formula 1. For example, look down here on the lower left of the bulkhead there on the left-hand side. You can see those two levers there marked with R and F. No, we're not talking about RF in terms of radio frequency. We're talking about rear and front. These are adjustments for the anti-roll bars, front and rear. So you can see linkages coming from each one of those levers. The R, there is a linkage moving toward the rear, and the F, there is a linkage moving toward the front. This will change the roll stiffness, front and rear, as the driver's going along. So the driver has some very interesting tools in the cockpit that Formula 1 drivers just can't do. They could do those things, of course, if they were allowed, but the FIA says no. In oval racing in particular, it's very important that you have that ability to control the roll rates front and rear, because as the car goes through a stint, as the tires wear out and as the fuel load burns down, the attitude of the car is going to change significantly. So drivers need to have some ability to adjust to that. That's how they did it back in the day, and it's still very similar to how they do it now in IndyCar on the ovals at very least. Over here on the right-hand side, here is our gear stick. You can see VRC have modeled this as a sequential, so I am led to believe that the 99 Reynard had a sequential gearbox and a sequential gearbox only. However, that's what we've got here. You can see just the stick there. It sits in a slot. It only goes forward and back. And of course, you can also see moving back here through the rear of the bulkhead, that is the shift linkage. Very nice. Up front, the steering wheel, very simple steering wheel. I'm only counting 6 buttons on it, plus a rotary switch in the center. Most likely that was for different engine map settings. Behind that, we have a dashboard. That's an LCD monitor, gives you a graphical tachometer, and then it's going to have more information such as engine RPM, selected gear, lap time, things of that nature. Also, in the dashboard section here, we have the option of running some supplemental instrumentation. You can see there's a backlight that we can turn on, and of course, when the car is alive, we'll have displays up there so we can read things. Also, on the dash, we have some... There we go. We have the ability to run a secondary readout. You can see this panel that's just come up. Press the 0 key on the numpad and that blanking panel comes in, or you get that secondary dash. This is going to give you on the left-hand window there the selected gear. Those gray bulbs in the center, those are shift lights. They'll come up from left to right. And then in the big window on the right, you'll have engine RPM again. So you'll have a redundant tachometer, both graphically and numerically. You also have a redundant gear display. It depends on what you're feeling like. Honestly, running this car on the oval, I don't like to run the secondary display because you're not really changing gear much on an oval. On the road course, I like that secondary display. It's very nice. Looking around the rest of the cockpit, though, you can see we have seat belts and we have seat detail. Nice carbon weave throughout. Looking around the cockpit surround, this is really indicative of how old this car is. Yeah, you've got the cockpit surround. It looks quite similar to what you see now in IndyCar as well as Formula 1, Formula 2. But just look at the amount of padding that's not here. It almost looks like that these are stitched either leather or some sort of faux leather panels here, some sort of synthetic material. Really not much bolstering, really not much cushioning in the event of an accident. And also remember, these drivers not running the Hans device back in these days. So if you did have the misfortune of having an accident, your head was going to be slamming around inside this cockpit with basically nothing to cushion the blow. So that should just put things into perspective. Anyway, leaving the cockpit now. And we can just take another look at what's going on with this car. There are some more details externally that I want to point out. You can see the front wing here. Pressing the number 1 on the numpad here, and you can see the angle of the main flap on that front wing. It is changing, and there is a lot of detail in that. Have a look here. Watch through the end plate there. You can see that the little set screw on the end fence of that front wing, that is moving as that flap is moving. That is attention to detail if ever I saw it. And also you can see this little T-shaped grab bar up here. That was how the teams would adjust the wing angle in the pit stop, and that moves with the main plane of the wing there and that flap element. That is really cool. We have similar details on the rear wing. Watch the rear wing. And you can see the rear wing drops down to almost perfectly flat. That's more or less your oval configuration there. And then, of course, you can bring it back up. Again, numpad 2 on your keyboard, and that changes what the rear wing does. Have a look at this from the rear. There we go. You can just see the slot gap close up, and the secondary flap there closes and drops down. Very nice. And again, you get that great detail in the rear wing end plates as well with the set screws. Just watch that. Look at that. Both of them. They toggle up and down as that flap element moves up and down. Tremendous level of detail, once again, by VRC. Hats off to you. I really, really, really am impressed by this car. Looks great. It drives great, as we're about to see. And really, just the way you interface with everything and just even something to look at, it is an absolutely fantastic thing. It is a work of art here in Assetto Corsa. Really, thank you guys for the tremendous work that you do. And of course, we really are awaiting the completion of this pack. Yes, that 2018 car is going to be really cool. Anyway, we have to drive this car. Because we're in the road course spec, we're going to drive it at Laguna Seca. It was host to a race in the 1999 season. And, well, you'll find that this car is very well at home. First off, though, I just want to do one last thing in showroom view. This car comes with a number of constituent liveries. VRC, because this is a pay mod, they are being careful in terms of copyright. So, we have some liveries which are quite reminiscent of the 1999 season, but you'll see that they have some liberties, shall we say, taken in the sponsorship department. This obviously would be a Penske livery. However, you can see that it is sponsored by Cigarette, and it runs on good road angle tires, as you can see there. Yes, obviously that would be Marlboro, and the tires would be Goodyear Eagles, but, well, there you go. If you're going to sell mods, if you don't want to deal with the exorbitant fees of licensing, this is what you have to do. And I have to say I really like them because they're well done, number one, but number two, they're humorous. They make me laugh. There's just something really funny about driving a car that says Rentski Cigarette. Yes, I really like it. Taking a look through some of the other liveries here. Tango, sponsored by Horizon and Powerizer. Yeah. Horizon, once again. Very, very cool. Once again on good road tires. Chef, the best oil company on the planet. Choose Chef. Logan. dud. This is the best one. Yes, Dudge Dino Beer. Drink dud. Be a dud. Hope this car's not a dud. No, it's not. Running on fire starter tires. Here's K-Shop. Obviously, if you're not familiar with it, Kmart was a chain of basically everything stores here in the United States. They were very big in the 80s and 90s. They are pretty much defunct now, but Kmart would have been the livery here. K-Shop is the VRC version. Here we have Motor Oil. Obviously, this would be Motorola, the electronics and cell phone company. The VRC livery that we've been looking at. VRC World Mod. I believe this would have been an AT&T Nordstar livery, something like that, if my 90s brain serves me correctly. Cool. This is pretty close to what it would have been. Cool, Kool. That was another cigarette company. Spelling the word as it actually is there. Player. This would have been another cigarette company. Induc there instead of Indec. I believe they were an automotive electronics company. In Brazil, I can't quite remember what the actual name of that sponsor was, but yep, there it is. Castor, yes, obviously this would be Castrol, and I like the eagle detail here on the nose, big American eagle there. It looks very, very nice. Castor, not Castrol. Tex-Mex, obviously this would be Telmex, but Tex-Mex, one of my favorite cuisine options. Star West, can't quite remember what that one actually was, but I know that Menards, not Menards, is a company here in the United States. I believe they're a retail outfitter. And perhaps that's it in terms of liveries. Yes, it actually is it in terms of all the liveries here. But yes, back to the VRC logo that we were looking at before. Let's go to Laguna Seca before I bore all of you to tears talking about parody paint schemes. Welcome to Laguna Seca. As promised, we're going to take this car out on track at this place, and here in the natural lighting you can see how absolutely resplendent it looks here sitting here in the pit lane at Laguna. Yeah. VRC, you have definitely outdone yourselves once again. I am absolutely amazed at the level of detail that you've got. I mean, have a look underneath the bodywork here. You can see the dampers. They're there. They're all modeled. The half shafts coming out of the back of the gearbox, tremendous. The rear light with that light bloom effect, and you can see all the detail in the lensing, all the little cable stays and coolant lines and all kinds of things. The exhaust outlets there coming right out the sides of the diffuser. It really looks tremendous. It really, really does. Anyway, back to the pit screen with us so that we can get a little bit of information in terms of how this car is set up on default. First of all, here's your gearbox, 6-speed gearbox. We're running it as a manual here. In reality, it would have been a sequential, but 6-speed box. It does have reverse, of course. You can adjust all of your ratios, first through sixth, and your final drive to your heart's content. Default values shown here. Tires, we have soft and hard tires to choose from here. Our Firestone Fire Starter tires, or actually, what are they? They're Fire Bridge Fire Starter tires here. Obviously, they would be Firestone Fire Hawks in reality. Tire pressures, default values shown. They can be adjusted down to 13 psi at the minimum and 18 at the maximum, and that does apply front and rear as well. Fuel, we've got it zeroed out to keep the engine quiet, but maximum fuel capacity is 132 liters, as you can see. Electronics, turbocharger. Default boost is at 90%. Obviously, it goes up to 100, and you can bring it all the way down to 0 if you so desire. Aero, front and rear wings. Default value shown, but watch this. Watch the front wing here. So we ramp the downforce down. You can see the angle of attack on that flap element does change. Very cool. Also happens on the rear wing. Have a look now. Watch the slot gap. Yep. Pretty dramatic. You can see it closes down to 0 there as the wing angle is ramped down. Very cool. Alignment, camber and toe in all 4 corners. More conventional stuff now. Default values shown. Drivetrain, differential, power coast, and preload.
Generic engine limiter defaults to 100, goes all the way down to 95 if you want. Brake bias defaults to 56% to the front axle. Brake power, 100% default. Steering assist, that is your power steering. This car actually would not have power steering. That's just an Assetto Corsa setting there. Suspension, your dampers, all four corners, your bound and rebound there. Your main suspension settings, anti-roll bars front and rear, also ride heights and wheel rates on all four corners. Travel settings for the suspension. You can see your travel ranges for all four corners as well as for the heave dampers front and rear. Visual. This is where you make those adjustments for the mini display that we talked about in the cockpit. Here's cockpit view. Mini display to 1, and there's your mini display. Mini display to 0, it goes away. Coming outside the car, turbo snorkel. You see here on the bodywork where we just have this screened out section there. Turbo snorkel to 1, and well, there's your snorkel there for the turbocharger intake. We mentioned in showroom view that roll hoop there, that's not the engine air intake, obviously, because it's an open cross section there. This would be your air intake for the turbocharger if you so choose to run it. And you can even see there, a little hard to see, but there is screening over the front of that snorkel there, just to keep it from ingesting debris, large pieces of debris, things like that. Of course, the car would have a traditional air filter in it as well. That's about it in terms of our settings here in the pit lane. Going to load up a custom setup here. And we've got some fuel in the tank. We're going to put a bit more fuel in the tank for our demo run here. Turbo boost pressure is going to go to 0 for the moment. We're going to keep the wings right where they are at default, and the rest of this setup is basically default. Visual settings, mini display is going to be turned on. And we're also going to run our turbo intake snorkel. So, yep, that's all we're going to do in terms of our setup changes for this run. And now, to the cockpit. Now that the car is alive, you can see what I mean about the dashboard. You can see there on the main LCD screen, we have got a graphical tachometer. We have also got ourselves lap time ticking away there in the lower left. Engine RPM numerically represented in the center of the lower line. Then moving up in the middle, you can see indicated gear, neutral, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and reverse as well. We'll have speed reading out to the right of that. And then up top, you can see that information repeated with our gear indicator. We will have shift lights. Once the RPMs get high enough, we'll have shift lights, and then you can see a graphical, numerical representation of our engine RPM, again repeated from the lowest line of the main LCD. See the mirrors in here? You can see plenty behind you, no problem there. And that about covers the cockpit. I like the view from this cockpit. You can see everything, and the cockpit sills are not too high, not limiting your forward or peripheral vision really to any extent. For our purposes here, I'll have our gear displayed there on the left-hand side of the screen, as well as our pedal traces. Anyway, on to the track. And before anybody says anything, the turbocharger is down to 0%, remember. Very tight pit exit here. Up in a 6th gear, and just slowly going to start to build some tire and brake temperatures. And also giving you your first taste of the sounds in this wonderful car. This engine redlines at 15,000 RPM. So here just running at about 9,000 at extreme for the moment. There are a lot more revs in it. Starting to build some temperatures now. There are your revs. Remember, still no boost. Trying to build some tire temperature. Starting to push the car a little bit. And then we'll start to ratchet up the boost pressure. Again, we are running the manual gearbox physics. So if you watch the pedal trace closely, you'll see that we've got 3 pedal action going on. Let's dial up the turbocharger. Let's go up to maximum safe race boost, which is 90%. And you can really see how the car starts to take off. Running 90% boost there. This is about 920, 940-ish horsepower. See the vehicle status indicator coming up there. If I'm being a little bit harsh on a downshift, or if I'm completely dropping the wheel off into the gravel there. Come on, there we go. Build some temperature in the brakes. I still don't have any brake temperature. Come on. All right, things should be sufficiently warm now. All right, now the car is starting to be there for me. We can speak representatively about things now. I will say straight from the outset, this is my kind of car. I like cars like these. Lots of horsepower, but not a whole ton of downforce. Again, the inevitable comparisons to Formula One, they always happen. In terms of your cornering performance, obviously you are diminished from Formula One levels of grip because it just doesn't have the downforce. But unlike a late 90s Formula One car, this thing has proper slick tires. Remember, Formula One in this era, they were running grooves. So that means that we have maximum contact patch. You'll see there as we turn into those medium and low speed corners, the back end wants to step out. It is not by any means glued to the road surface. It just doesn't have the downforce. So if you're used to Formula One cars of the V10 era, this is going to take an adjustment. It has just as much horsepower as the Ferrari F2004, for argument's sake. But the chassis dynamics and the overall driving dynamics are much more comparable to a turbo-era Formula One car. So think McLaren MP44, think Lotus 98T. That is the territory that we're playing in. So you've got to wrap your head around that. You have got basically late V10 era horsepower, but you have mid-1980s levels of downforce. And in terms of the way the car is generating the downforce, also very similar to 1980s Formula One. Yes, you do have wings, but there's also a lot of under tray action. terms of what the car is like to drive, well, when you get in it, the first thing that you notice, once you ramp the turbocharger up, you notice the tremendous amount of horsepower that you have. We're running at race boost. This is 90% of the turbocharger's capacity. About 920 to 940 horsepower in this specification. With this boost pressure, you really feel it. It definitely feels like enough. The way it eats through gears is something that you have to experience to believe. I nearly held it there. You do have to be ready to catch it. Lots of wheel spin there through third gear. That's also par for the course. I'm definitely overdriving the car a bit in my enthusiasm. This is very much a car that you have to think through it, as I obviously wasn't thinking there. You have to think through it. You have to be very deliberate with everything that you do. Obviously, talking to you, I'm thinking about what I'm going to say rather than thinking about driving the car. This is not the kind of car that you can afford to lose your concentration with. This is definitely an all-encompassing experience. Of course, running it here with the H-pattern manual gearbox, you do, of course, have to make sure that you're shifting on time and correctly, with your clutch, with your lifting off the throttle, with your heel toe under braking. You really do have to be mindful of what you're doing. Driving this car is an exercise in mindfulness, for sure. Beyond that, you also have to be very cognizant of where you are on the racetrack. You have to know where your turn-in point is. Where is the apex? Where can you get back on the power? And of course, all of that is going to change somewhat depending on how much boost you have dialed in. So the car can completely change its character just over the course of a single stint, depending on where your settings are. And of course, you can control that turbo boost from the cockpit, so you definitely have a lot to think about, even though there's not all that much to operate in here. I've got gears, I've got throttle, brake, clutch, and steering. That's it. Obviously, no hybrid systems in this car. You don't have to worry about your harvest versus your expenditure, things like that. But it is just an all-encompassing driving machine. It really is. Once you've got your head wrapped around the insane amount of horsepower it's got, though, and you start to adapt your thinking to getting ready to catch the rear end, as you see me doing to varying degrees of success here as we're going along, then you start to think about the other things that the car does, or perhaps doesn't do. You think about the braking in this car. It's very good. It's not Formula 1 good, though. So, yes, remember, we have another 100 kilograms or so over a 1999 Formula 1 car. So, obviously, the car is heavier, so your cornering speeds are going to be reduced, and your braking distances are going to be increased. But it's also very easy to lock up the brakes, particularly on the front axle. So, you've got to be mindful of that. Watching the brake trace as we're going into some of these corners here, you'll see that I am basically never on full brakes. It's just basically a brush of the brakes, and then I'm using the throttle to balance the car through the remainder of the corner. A little bit of left foot braking sometimes if I don't need to downshift into a corner, but really the brakes, you're not using them full on. Pretty much you're never using full brakes, at least not on the road course. Ah, man. That's going to be a hit. Yep. Well, we can use this opportunity to take a look at some of the damage dynamics that we've got going on. Here, there you go. So we've got some denting and scuffing there on the front, and of course the front wing is all askew. The front wing does move around a little bit once you are underway, as you can see. But yeah, there's your damage dynamics. Use this opportunity to demonstrate a pit stop. There we go, 4 wheels off, 4 wheels on. Rest of the time is going to be spent repairing the damage. Obviously no animations of that in any car in Assetto Corsa. Nearly done with that. There we go. And back out. You can see that this car is always ready to bite you if you're not quite invested in it 100%. Mentioned being able to lock the front axle there. You can see on the left front coming through the corkscrew. Easy to lock up due to the weight distribution there, the cross weight on the car in particular. Before our little crash, I was about to get into the steering. What's the steering feel like? Well, it feels very good if you must ask. No power steering in this car, of course, so you get great force feedback, I must say. But it's not too heavy, it's not too light. You know exactly where all 4 corners are. Feels very nice, feels very convincing. And the gearbox. It's a manual box, but it's very quick. It's also very unforgiving. If you mess up a shift, you are going to start blinking the gearbox on the vehicle status indicator. Also, you can over-rev the engine quite easily if you misjudge your timing on your downshifts there, or you skip one too many gears if you do like to skip downshifts. Be mindful of that, but it's all mechanical. If you know how to drive, you know how to drive. It's pretty simple. You either got it or you don't. Let's go up to qualifying boost. 100% on the turbo. And now you will notice the vehicle status indicator is flashing constantly, telling me that the engine is getting ready to depart this earth. You can run full boost for an extended duration. You're not going to blow the car up immediately, but you will blow it up eventually if you try to run a whole race distance at full boost, for example. So be mindful of your turbocharger. Obviously, it's going to be reminding you constantly with the vehicle status indicator flashing up there. But again, just be aware of how much you're asking the engine to do at any given time. This is the full 960, 980-ish horsepower out of this car. And you can see it's very easy to spin. The engine's starting to complain a little bit. It's turned a very light yellow on the vehicle status indicator. Still okay. But that acceleration that we're getting now, that's pretty wild. definitely grabs your attention. Lots of wheel spin there. To the line, 110.085. Go. Gotta get the car into the corner. Very nice. Very, very nice. All right. Gonna go light here. Watch the back end. Now on the power. .667. So yeah, it definitely has some power if you're looking for it. We are about to run out of gas. Ultimately, though, this is quite a fantastic little car. And remember, this is only one side of it. We also have to take it out in its oval trim. It's a completely different kettle of fish when you drive it in the oval trim. We'll bring it back to the pits. We'll have some concluding thoughts here. Then we'll bring it out to the other part of this VRC pack. I don't think I mentioned this already. There's a track involved in this mod as well. 3 cars and a track, yeah. So, yeah, there's this part of the car. It's absolutely insane, the amount of performance that you've got in this. And yes, Formula One cars, both of the era, and of course today, they're going to be a lot faster. But you've got all of that horsepower, and you're combining it with rudimentary aero, by all intents and purposes, and a manual box. You've got quite the combination here, and it's something that really doesn't exist in too many other cars, both in the real world as well as here in Assetto Corsa. It is so raw, it is so visceral, it's just going to give you everything that you've ever wanted from a driving experience. It's challenging, it's going to bite you at every possible opportunity. If you're not ready for it, you will die. But if you are up for the challenge, this thing is also going to be there to reward you. It does require a lot to master, and obviously by no means have I entirely mastered it yet. But the performance is there, and the rewarding parts of the experience are definitely there. And of course, this is just one personality of this very dualistic bipolar car. We're going to have to take it to an oval and show you what it does there. And I'm not just talking about any oval, I'm talking about the South Star Speedway. Yes, in addition to 3 cars eventually that we'll get in this pack, We're also getting the South Star Speedway. Yes, it's modeled after Texas Motor Speedway, and those of you who know something about your kart history, you will know that kart and Texas Motor Speedway don't quite get along very well. We'll see you at South Star next. Welcome to South Star Motor Speedway. Yes, this is the final bit of the VRC Formula North America pack. This is a scratch-built, purpose-constructed oval track for the Formula North America mod, and as you can see, it is quite the facility. It's 1.5 miles long. It is modeled after Texas Motor Speedway, hence the name South Star. Those of you who aren't familiar with Texas, they call themselves the Lone Star State. That is an allusion to the flag of Texas. There is one star on it. Yes. This is an absolutely crazy place. In fact, this place is so fast that the kart series actually couldn't race here. They were all set to do a race weekend. However, the drivers were going so fast through these banked corners here that they were actually starting to black out due to the G-force. Yes, these cars are capable of speeds of over 250 miles per hour, and if we get down to the bottom of the banking here on the apron, yeah, you can see just how steep that is. So all of those vertical G loads going through the driver, it's going to pull the blood out of his head, not unlike what can happen to fighter pilots when they are in high G maneuvers. So the drivers had issues with getting faint, going unconscious here, therefore the race had to be scrapped. But you can see the amount of work that VRC have done to this place to get it to us. I mean, let's fly up here, get a sense of the scale of this facility. I mean, look at it. Not only have they modeled the track, but look at all this area around it on the environment tile. It's absolutely enormous. Just this area of grandstand alone, as we get a little bit lower into what would be the parking area. Just, yeah, we're not supposed to see this side, I understand, but yeah, it's enormous. Absolutely enormous. Get into the grandstand proper and you can really get the idea of what it must be like to be at this place. Huge. Great modeling all throughout the infield as well. I mean, the details on the vehicles and things here, not all that great, but they don't really need to be because you're never going to be in this part of the track. But it's really great, and it does provide us with some good racing action as well. Anyway, let's fly back over to the pit lane and take a look at our car. It is the same car that we were just running. However, you can see that we have some rather marked differences on it. As we get back in close, you can see gone are the big front and rear wings. They have been reduced down to just mere vestiges of their former selves. Have a look at this front wing. It is basically just a spoiler here, single element each side, and it is just ever so slightly raked downward there at its end plates there, if you could even call them end plates. Obviously, when you're running on an oval, you don't need all that much downforce, so that wing basically is just a spoiler at this point. It is the same story on the rear wing. It is flat. Again, it is just a spoiler here. There would have been something on the backs of some of these cars back in the day, something called the Hanford device. It's basically a vertical fence that just hangs down from that main element on the rear wing there, the actual main plane element of the wing. But not on this car. No gurney flaps either that we can see. But yes, this wing does its purpose quite well. It's just there as a spoiler. Most of your downforce, obviously, on the oval coming your way via the under tray. And again, those big ground effect tunnels under there. You can see how that works. That's where we're getting our downforce from. Definitely something to behold around here. Let's get back into the setup screen and just show you what's going on. We have a very different kind of setup on this car now that we are in oval specification. Here's our 6-speed gearbox again, but you can see just how wide these ratios now are. Theoretically, we could be topping out at 395 kilometers per hour, and no, that is still not the top speed of this car, but it's a 1.5 mile oval, so yeah, some restraint has to be shown, if you could call it that. Tires, we're now on the oval compound, just one compound to choose from. Our tire pressures are completely different now. 32 on the front and 30 on the rear. You can go down to 28 if you want, and all the way up to 36 if you so desire. Fuel, obviously, is the same car, same fuel tank, same electronics and aero adjustments, and basically the suspension adjustments that you can make are all exactly the same. However, the default values are different in the oval specification, as you can definitely tell. You want the car to be reasonably stiff around an oval because you're only turning left and you have a lot of force acting on the car at all times, mainly in the vertical direction. So heave damper is very important on ovals, as are your camber and toe settings in your suspension, because you're basically running a constant speed more or less. So what you want to make sure you have is a good adjustment on your camber and toe, because the tire temperatures, particularly the surface temperature of the tire, very important. If those tires get too hot, obviously they're going to start generating understeer, or push as you tend to call it on an oval, and that is going to be a problem when you're doing 250 miles an hour headed for a barrier. No runoff, obviously, at this place. Anyway, let's put some fuel in the car. And in the cockpit view, of course, unchanged from what it was at Laguna Seca. But yeah, you're going to notice the performance will be quite different. We're going to declutter our HUD a little bit. We're going to get rid of the gear display because we're not really going to be changing gear once we're up to speed, but we'll leave the pedal trace up. So there's the tattletale. You'll know when I'm lifting because, well, I am going to be lifting. There's first gear, and this will demonstrate just how wide the gearing is. There's second, third, fourth, and yeah. 280 clicks joining the circuit. There goes 320, 330, 340. Still flat out, still not fully up to speed. 14,000 RPM, 370 kilometers an hour. There's turn one. Bleed off the throttle. Out of turn two, down the back straight. We'll grab fifth gear, and we'll leave it in fifth gear for the entire way around this place once we're up to speed. Building tire pressures and tire temperatures now. 370 kilometers an hour. Breathing out of the throttle. Boost pressure won't even really drop off much. The wastegates will stay slammed shut. 374 kilometers an hour into 3 and 4. Pick up a little bit of grass on the infield there. As you can see, start-finish is not quite straight. Middle of turns 1 and 2, 349 kilometers an hour. And this is still race boost. This is not qualifying boost. We're at 90% on the turbo. Built some good tire temperatures, tire pressures. Air's qualifying boost. 380 kilometers an hour into turn 1. The engine will be crying the whole way around this place because of the boost pressure. Have about 20 to 25 laps at full boost before the engine will blow up. .14,000 RPM, 14.4 coming into turn 3. Just breathing off the throttle. A little bit of understeer. .273, 384 kilometers an hour into turn 1. Remember, we're geared out to 395, so top speed will be around there. Remember, you're going to do a lot of pack running on an oval, so the draft comes into the equation. You could easily gain another 10 kilometers an hour, if not a little bit more, if you've got a good slipstream. Force feedback still feels excellent. Steering weight is still very good. And you can see our driver is now going around this place one-handed. That is superhuman strength. Vertical G loading through these corners, definitely in excess of 3G. Maybe closer to 4, even 4.5, so you can understand how these guys might be blacking out. The most elite of elite fighter pilots can withstand 9G, but only that for a short time. And those guys are purpose-built machines, basically. Racing drivers, although they are in great shape, they do not have a great tolerance for vertical G loading. So when these guys got here for practice for the race at Texas, and they started to pull 4 Gs vertically for about, well, let's say 20 seconds a lap, you can understand just how quickly they might grow faint. Again, the blood is going to be pulled out of your head, and that's what's going to cause grayouts at very least, if not full-on blackouts, G-lock, G-induced loss of consciousness. We continue to go around here one-handed. It's absolutely mental. A little twitchy there. Complete and utter insanity. Of course, modern IndyCar, they're still doing 215 to 230 miles an hour through corners, depending on the circuit. But these guys, this is something else. Modern IndyCar has about 750 horsepower. These guys have, near as makes no difference, 1,000 horsepower. Starting to get a little bit of push there, understeer. Yep, you don't want twitches there, you really don't. Going way too fast to have any lurid moments, so if you get one, well, it's not going to end well. We're about to run out of fuel anyway. Yeah. It's crazy, absolutely crazy, the amount of power that this thing has and the amount of speed that you can carry all the way around this place. VRC definitely did a very good job in selecting this track to model for this mod. Assetto Corsa, it's a little bit short on good oval tracks, particularly where you can run really fast cars like these, but VRC, you've hit it out of the park with this inclusion in this mod, because we needed a proper oval in Assetto Corsa. Yes, there's a great version of Daytona that's out there, but we needed a purpose-built oval done by a really good modding team who was also going to give us cars to run on it, and VRC have definitely done that with Southstar. So hats off to the car, hats off to the track. Of course, this place is going to feature in the other reviews that we do of the Formula NA 2012, and when it comes to us, the 2018 car. But really, this is a fantastic place, and this is a fantastic car to run here, and it's just mind-bogglingly quick. There is one other thing that I do want to show you in the setup screen about this car, something that perhaps won't meet the eye, but Assetto Corsa, it has a limitation in its physics. Assetto Corsa, obviously, it's a sim that is mostly geared toward road cars and road courses, so Ovals are completely foreign to Assetto Corsa. There are no stock ovals available in Assetto Corsa. Yes, you have the combined circuit at Monza, Monza 66, but it's not strictly an oval, and it's a very different kind of oval as well. The American super speedways that we're used to seeing, they don't exist in the Kuno's universe. So the limitation is, Assetto Corsa, the car setup has to be symmetrical. In oval racing, most of the time you'll see things like stagger, where you have crossweight dialed into the car so that it's going to be left biased. You want the car to turn left on an oval. If it turns right, you die. Turning right is not your friend. So Assetto Corsa has a physics limitation where you can't dial crossweight into the car. It has to be symmetrical like it would be for a road course setup. So that is one limitation that does hold this car back a little bit, I feel, but this is the best you can do in Assetto Corsa and VRC. Obviously, they've done a really good job. I mean, our cornering speeds are still over 360 kilometers an hour. So, yeah, it's really spectacular, but I did just want to mention that. We'll look at our suspension settings as well. You can see everything from left to right, it is absolutely identical. And that is a limitation in Assetto Corsa. Obviously, you can change things a bit if you do want things to be a little bit asymmetrical. For example, if you want to dial some stagger into the car, we can make the right side a bit higher. So we can raise the ride height there on the right side and lower it on the left side, so you can get that weight transfer across the car if you want. We'll go out and we'll test that theory out. Put some gas back in the car. So trying our best to dial some stagger into this thing. First lap at speed. It does help the turn in a little bit. Car feels a little bit more planted through here. I am slightly concerned with the car bottoming. I can feel that a little bit more through the force feedback. Definitely a much smaller breathe out of the throttle there through 3 and 4, up to qualifying boost. There's a bit of understeer creeping its way in. .22.961, so lap time a little bit better. So our attempt at trying to replicate a little bit of stagger, well, it does work. You gain a little bit in lap time, although average speed around an oval is generally how qualifying is done, so lap time not necessarily the way forward, although if your average speed is higher, your lap time is most likely going to be lower. Also, an interesting little quirk about this circuit, it only has 2 sectors. So the timing screens, if you do a race, the timing screen you get at the end of a race, you only see Sector 1 and Sector 2. There is no Sector 3. That was a little twitch there. Just hang on to it. Anyway, I think you get the idea of how all of this works. It's absolutely nuts. It's really fast. It should probably be illegal because it is a lot of fun. But there it is. We have it here now in Assetto Corsa. Anyway, there it is. Formula North America 1999. Again, this is just one of eventually 3 cars that we will have in this mod. It's one of 2 that we have right now. It's by far the fastest, it's the craziest, it's the most powerful, it is the most spectacular thing that I have seen in Assetto Corsa in quite some time. This is the kind of mod that is going to rival Formula Hybrid, the RSS GT series. It is on that level. That is the level of craftsmanship and fidelity that we have in this thing. And this is just, technically speaking, 33% of the overall package. So if I can spend this much time talking about one car, imagine how much time I'm going to spend talking about the 2 others. So really, this is a brilliant mod. If you don't have it already, check it out. VRC modding team. They are the preeminent guys today in Assetto Corsa. Links to all of this, of course, in the video description. And before we get out of here, we're going to do, of course, trackside hot laps as well as onboard replays at Laguna Seca as well as here at South Star. Stay tuned for the hot laps, everyone. Ferrariman601 saying thank you very much for watching, and thank you to VRC for this absolutely wonderful mod. Stay tuned for the hot laps. Thank you very much for watching. Ferrariman601 saying we will see you soon.